Hey everyone, John Latona here. I am a professional bassist and a music educator that proudly represents labella strings, Philip Jones bass amplification, and the reason why we're making this video, NS Design, and particularly speaking, the WAV 4 bass. This is an upright bass that is meant to be plugged in, and it travels great, and it sounds amazing, especially when you apply my tips on how to get a really good pizzicato sound. For those who don't know, pizzicato means you're plucking a bowed instrument instead of actually bowing it to produce a sound. And my 3 tips on how to get the best possible sound is, first off, surround yourself with great equipment, just like using this Philip Jones BG-400 bass amp, amazing for medium, small, and possibly mid-large venues. And also changing your strings. And in this case, I use labella RC 610 double bass strings, which are really great for both bowing and plucking, because I like to do both. And when you actually change the strings, this is tip number 1, by the way. When you actually change the strings and use like real acoustic bass strings, with all due respect to NS Design stock strings, it just naturally makes the instrument sound more acoustic. So that's my tip number 1, is like just make sure you surround yourself with like really good equipment and use strings that are meant for the acoustic bass. And I will give a disclaimer here: if you do it, you're gonna get something like this, where you see the fabricated wrapping above the bridge. And normally you're not supposed to see that, or not supposed to happen, but NS Design did say, like, if you do happen to change the strings and they're meant for a standard acoustic bass, that will happen. It doesn't bother me, and actually I like the strings quite well, and they serve for really, really, really nice acoustic sound. All right, so that's my tip number 1. Tip number 2, and this is something that I see bass players do all the time with this instrument, is most people who play this, they happen to primarily play electric bass. And this bass and the Omni 4 bass, by the way, which is their bass that is just like this, except it's 34 inches in scale length, just like a standard electric bass. This one's 41 inches about in scale length, like a standard upright bass. And I see a lot of bass players stand right next to it, and I see them with their fingers like this. To me, this is a dead giveaway that the person playing the instrument is an electric bass player. And what I typically like to do to help authenticate this acoustic sound is, first off, don't stand so close. A little wobbly. I gotta fix that later. Don't stand so close, and don't pluck like this. All right? Stand like you're actually gonna play an upright bass. Because let's face it, even though this is an electric instrument, it's still an upright bass. And we still bow with it, and we still stand and play with it the same way as we do a standard acoustic bass. So you're gonna basically stand, give about 1.5 feet or so, give or take. And then when you pluck, you wanna be right around where the fingerboard ends, and pluck like you normally pluck. And just pluck like you would pluck a standard upright bass. I'm willing to give tutorials later on how to do that, but we have to treat this like a real acoustic instrument, because this is a real instrument. All right, so that's tip number 2, is make sure that you treat it like an upright bass and pluck it like an upright bass. Finally, tip number 3, and this is going to be somewhat controversial, all right, is there's actually a switch here, and if you go and check out a demo, they explain this really clearly. There's a switch on the side, and when you switch up, it's typically meant for bowed playing. And when you flick it down, it's meant for the plucking. Now, thinking back on the days of like guys like Paul Chambers or Slam Stewart, who happened to be both plucking the instrument and bowing the instrument, they didn't have a switch to go from back and forth. And they got me thinking, what if I just kept it on arco the whole time? And in my opinion, this actually makes it sound like an acoustic bass comparatively. So this is versus part of my playing there wasn't particularly great. And you may not have noticed much of a difference, but there is a little bit of a deeper tone with the second one. And it makes me think that it's more of an acoustic instrument. So if you actually follow these 3 tips of, changing your strings to like real acoustic bass strings and using good amplification, treat it like a bass, stand it like it's an upright, not like an electric, and pluck it like it's an upright, not like it's an electric, and keep the lever on arco the whole time, even when you're plucking. All right, these are my 3 tips on how to maximize the quality of the plucking sound, particularly if you want a very close to authentic acoustic sound. Thank you all for checking this out, and I look forward to sharing more videos with you soon.